Thanks so much for joining me. We've got a flood warning along the Elbow River west of the city of Calgary following a couple days of substantial precipitation. These scenes shot on Monday morning downstream of Bragg Creek along the Elbow, and of course, for the first time ever, officials diverting water away from the Elbow and into the Springbank Off-Stream Reservoir. If you drive west of Calgary on Highway 22, you can actually see water flowing through those diversion channels. Very interesting to see this critical piece of flood mitigation infrastructure being used for the first time. And of course, very dramatic scenes along the Elbow upstream on Sunday evening. Looks like a raging torrent of chocolate milk there pouring over the falls with all of that excess runoff from the heavy precipitation. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on out there across Alberta. From the Alberta River Forecast Center, we've got high stream flow advisories continuing through much of central and southwestern Alberta, even along the Bow River there through Calgary and downstream. The Oldman and Lethbridge there, we've got some flood watches along the Freeman here near Swan Hills, along the Red Deer and Little Red Deer near Sundre, and in the Pipestone near Lake Louise. But of course, here we've got that flood warning there in the Elbow River, just west of the city of Calgary, where we received a lot of precipitation. In general, over the last week, this really captures this last precipitation we've had, the precipitation event that we've seen. And we can see anywhere where it's sort of dark blue here, that's 40 plus millimeters of rain that's fallen over the past 7 days. Even some higher totals there where it's light blue here, even into the Peace there, over 60 millimeters in some areas there. So fairly welcome up here. Also heavy totals there along the terrain in southwestern Alberta and fairly excessive there west of Calgary. And we can see, of course, a 24-hour precipitation as of Monday morning. Over 100 millimeters through much of Kananaskis and even well in excess of 120 millimeters at a few sites there. You can actually look at a few of the rain gauges. And Compression Ridge here, just up almost 140 millimeters there. I believe this one has the most at Evan Thomas Creek, just under 170 millimeters. About 140 there at Little Elbow Summit, and finally down here at Burns Creek, also about 150. Lots of water falling into the Elbow River watershed there. We can actually go ahead and look at what that looked like on radar when it was most intense on Sunday evening. We can see that upslope enhancement there as that moist air just piling into the terrain there, and we're seeing the heaviest totals really just here along Kananaskis and areas a little bit further to the north toward Canmore, where we're also seeing some flood concerns as a result of this system. We actually go ahead and take a look at our hydrographs here. Bragg Creek, we can see even though the rain started out in the hills and started accumulating about 10 in the morning, we saw the Elbow really start to respond about 8 or 9 hours later here. And really just, we're going from just under a meter water level to, cresting at about 7:45 Monday morning at just over 3 meters. And remaining quite elevated through Monday. So that's that's a lot of water flowing down the Elbow River, hence the flood warning there. And of course, if we look a little bit downstream here, the Sarcee Bridge, just before we enter the city of Calgary on the west side there, even about 5 hours after the river levels start to increase there in Bragg Creek, we see them increase here. But of course, we're diverting a lot of water away from the Elbow River that's entering Calgary, in particular there at Glenmore Reservoir. So of course, that off-stream reservoir doing its work here. That earlier scene that I showed was shot from right about here. You can see this is where the gates are opened and the water is diverted here into this off-stream reservoir. This is normally just dry land, but it's designed for, the design flood is basically the 2013 flood. That's that dark blue here. We're likely I would imagine we'd probably fill it up about this much or so. And once the sort of flood concerns have passed, we can actually allow this water to drain back gradually into the Elbow River there. So if you just picture like a potentially concerning flood event is like a giant wave of water slowly coming down the Elbow River, you're basically just shaving off the crest of that wave and allowing it to flow into this off-stream reservoir so that you can really better control the flows downstream and sort of mitigate that flood risk into the city of Calgary. So this is doing its intended purpose. This is probably the most critical piece of flood infrastructure that's been built since 2013. So very interesting to see that being put to use here. And of course, in the city of Calgary as a result, our river conditions, though high, and of course the officials and city fire department urging residents to stay off the water and away from the water, we're still seeing, we're not flooding along the elbow as a result. We would probably be seeing some flooding in the past with an event like this, but just high river flows there expected along the elbow. Bow is a little bit higher even. There's some areas where we could see more localized flooding in low-lying areas and some pathways there along the Bow, and even in some of those vulnerable areas where we could see possible basement seepage. So keep that in mind out there. But in general, this is great news to see this off-stream reservoir being used. Of course, we had very heavy precipitation falling through much of Kananaskis country as well. This video here is shot just south of the Kananaskis village along Rock Creek by Tom Graham. Thanks so much for letting me use this footage here, Tom. And you can see just torrents of water there flowing through Kananaskis country elsewhere as well. And of course, we've had several washouts along roads, landslides, debris flows, and whatnot. So Highway 40 is closed, and that's actually stranded a number of campers. I think about 1,500 campers as well as residents. My friend Tom, who lives in the valley there also. So, I mean, that's it's a very substantial rainfall, and it's causing big problems along Highway 40 there. So keep that in mind as we head into Canada Day and even into Stampede Week in Calgary here. We've had a lot of rain out there that's making travel very challenging out there as well. Powder Face Trail closed as a result of all this rain and some, road washouts, landslides, and whatnot. So lots of impacts out there in Kananaskis country where most of that rain fell, and most of it fell just in a day. So that just gives you an idea for how much damage so much water can do in a fairly short period of time. We can actually go ahead and look at what's happening, though, in the coming days. Lingering showers, rain, and thunderstorms just pushing out through the rest of the day on Monday. And relatively drier in the mountains, but it's still, we're seeing these daytime showers and thunderstorms with daytime heating. So, we could still see some isolated heavy downpours, but in terms of those, the long duration heavy rainfall event, it seems like we're kind of in the clear for this week. But like I say, daily shower and thunderstorm activity, fairly unsettled conditions across Alberta. So still going to be showers, thunderstorms, and heavy downpours in localized areas across much of the province. One thing that may temper it somewhat is actually wildfire smoke. In Alberta, you may notice on Monday, it smells like smoke out there. That's because there's some big fires burning in northeastern Saskatchewan, northwestern Manitoba, north of these areas that are just getting excessive precipitation. And of course, the circulation of that low that's been bringing us all this significant weather in recent days is drawing that smoke backwards across Alberta. And that's going to kind of linger for a couple of days. So that actually can reduce the amount of sun that comes into the atmosphere and reduce the destabilization of the atmosphere and limit sort of the intensity of these showers and thunderstorms. So that could sort of limit us a little bit in that sense, but we'll also be dealing with a little bit of air quality concerns. It's kind of strange, perhaps, to be dealing with wildfire smoke at the same time as flood concerns in some areas, but there you have it. That's late June here in Alberta. If you like this video, please give it a like, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. In the meantime, thanks so much for joining, and we'll talk to you next time.